Lyra chanced to look behind her as she walked away from the library. Berry Punch was still heading off in the opposite direction, her anger causing her to take short, powerful strides. The unicorn spy had already known her enemy hailed from Canterlot. It had been a simple effort to find out more about her. Last night she went to see Barry's friend, Hort Cuisine, and indulged in a little casual conversation. The Earth Pony was proving to be a major thorn in her side. This morning wouldn't be the end of it. The blatant way she had been provoking Lyra had succeeded in causing her to lose her cool. Carrot Top would be suspicious of her now, and that was only the best case scenario. It was likely that Barry had told her about Lyra's mission. She would need to lie low for a while and rethink her tactics. She had been on the job for a couple of days now, but had come no closer to proving whether Carrot Top was up to anything or not. There were 3 leads that she could investigate. The first was Noteworthy, who Carrot Top seemed to have a strong interest in. It appeared she had come to the library to hold a stakeout on his house. That suggested their planned date hadn't happened after all, so maybe it was time for Lyra to make a move. The second was Zecora. Carrot Top had revealed that the two of them were in business together, using part of the Everfree Forest to grow her vegetable crops. There was a possibility that the zebra knew something about her true intentions. The third and most urgent lead was Berry Punch herself. She already said she knew what Lyra's mission was, and that she was working for Celestia. She had also let slip that she was working for Nightmare Moon. Lyra shuddered at the thought of her last encounter with the Dark Princess of the Night. She had been part of the team that was sent to reactivate the elements of harmony. Their mission took a couple of years before Nightmare Moon finally became strong enough to break free from the spell trapping her on the moon. Her power had grown to the point where it was able to manifest itself in Equestria. The creatures in the Everfree Forest became increasingly dangerous and aggressive, and some of the residents of Ponyville were starting to act out of character. It was as if she was able to take control of them. Once the elements had been reactivated, Nightmare Moon was no longer able to reach out from her prison. The effects of her dark magic faded from Equestria. As far as every pony knew, she had been destroyed or banished when Princess Luna was purged of her influence. Barry's words suggested that this was not the case. Lyra had already written to Celestia to warn her about this new threat, but hadn't received any response yet. She reached her home but didn't go inside. Instead, she just made sure the doors and windows were locked, and headed towards Hoove's house. After her altercation with Barry in the library, she wasn't willing to take any chances. She was sure the Earth Pony would be planning to make a move against her. Staying with Hooves would make her hard to find, and give her some backup if she was attacked. Her mission would have to wait for now, she decided. It was too difficult to get any work done with Barry watching her every move. She needed to take her down, but it would be better to do it without the need for a fight. She would wait until tonight. The wooden stairs squeaked as Noi sleepily walked down into the kitchen, distracting Carrot Top from her preparations. The elder sister turned to face her, her expression showing her disapproval. "Noi, I told you to go to bed. It's very late," she said wearily. "But I can't sleep. I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen to you," replied the filly. Carrot Top sighed. After those 2 ruffians had left the library, the day had passed without any further incident. There had been no signs of Noteworthy throughout the entire stakeout. The most that had happened was some pony going to his house and knocking on the door, then walking away when there was no answer. Still, it hadn't been a total loss. She had taken the chance to get to know Twilight Sparkle a little better. She was pleasant company, if a little nerdy. It turned out the young student was friends with that Heartstrings character, though she couldn't shed any light on why she and Berry Punch were at each other's throats. Still, that was something to work on later. Right now, Carrot Top was getting ready to break into Noteworthy's home to find out why he had done a disappearing act. She raised her head from the cupboard and placed a glass cutter into her saddlebag. This was the first tool she would be using to break in, so it was the last thing she needed to pack. She was ready. "I told you already, Noi. I suspect Noteworthy has already fled town, so I'm not going to be in any danger. Even if he does show his face, I am more than capable of knocking him down a peg or 2. She pressed a hoof against the filly's cheek in a show of affection. "You just need to get yourself to bed, and I'll be here in the morning, regaling you with tales of my heroism over breakfast." Noi wasn't convinced. She didn't look her sister in the eye as she spoke. "I don't know. It feels different this time. I was never scared when you were spying in the Everfree Forest all those times. Because you were making sure you were hidden then. You never had to fight anyone. You haven't even told me why you're after him. There it was again, that pang of guilt. Carrot Top had found this work much easier when Noi was younger and staying with their parents. The filly had moved in with her when she got a place at Ponyville Primary School. An unusual choice for a Kennel-Lot resident, despite the fact that the standard of education there was second to none. Carrot Top hadn't complained, as she had believed her day as a spy were over. If any pony had told her just a few months ago that she would end up embroiled in a plot to overthrow Princess Celestia, she would have laughed at them. The true reason she was after Noteworthy was because of his royal connections. It's complicated, Noi, and I won't know all the answers myself until I've investigated properly, she said. No, please, try to get some sleep. The filly still wasn't satisfied and refused to let her go. Despite Carrot Top's best efforts, she couldn't allay her sister's fears. It was the fact that she was breaking and entering another pony's home that was the biggest sticking point. Noi hadn't grown up looking at her big sister as a hero, yet here she was doing something she knew was illegal. Even if Noteworthy was a bad pony, as she said, it still felt wrong. Carrot Top was just beginning to lose her patience when there was an urgent knocking at the door. She shared a confused look with Noi, who would be calling at this late hour, and walked over to answer it. The sight that greeted her when she opened the door provoked a sharp intake of breath. There he stood, framed by the dark of the night sky, a humorless frown furrowing his features. Noteworthy? There was a slight stammer in her voice, caused by the shock of his sudden appearance and the ferocious look on his face. Where have you been? I've been looking for you. I'm well aware of that fact, he said, pushing his way into her house and forcing her to step back. The door closed shut behind him. Wait, now look here. You can't just barge into a lady's home. It's most ungentlecourtly, she cried, flustered. In response, he raised one of his front hooves, which was covered by what looked like a metal boot. She quickly realized what the hoofwear was when a set of fingers unfurled from it. It was the artificial hands he had mentioned when he was talking to the Kennel-Lot musician at the party. Just in case you were thinking of trying anything, you should know this device is capable of crushing rock with just one squeeze. He clenched the fingers into a fist, his eyes never leaving hers. I know your true intentions, so I made sure to bring this little insurance, as it were. I was disappointed when I learned you weren't truly interested in dating me, but believe me, I'm over you now. Carrot Top backed away slowly from him, her body tensed and ready to strike out if he made a move against her. Noi, who had been shocked into silence by Noteworthy's arrival, regained her voice. It's you! You're that bad pony! She cried, unsure whether she should rush to her sister's side or find somewhere to hide. He snorted dismissively. I'm afraid not, young one. Your sister's the only villain in this room. Carrot Top narrowed her eyes, her voice lowered to an angry hiss. You have no right to speak about me like that! How dare you besmirch my name! Enough of this. Come out with the truth, he said, rearing up on his hind legs. I know everything. I know you're working with Berry Punch. About an hour before this heated exchange, the rivalry between Berry Punch and Lyra had finally come to a head. The time was a little past midnight, and the unicorn spy was lurking in a shadowy alleyway not far from her target's house. The light in Berry's upstairs bedroom had gone out about 75 minutes ago, and there had been no signs of movement since then. Lyra was fully equipped for action. She was dressed from head to hoof in black lycra, and unlike some ponies, she had made sure to tuck herself in fully. No sense in using camouflage if her white and green tail was left out on show. Her outfit had a couple of useful pockets on the back. One held her trusty lockpick, and the other had a handkerchief doused in a magically altered chloroform. It could knock ponies out far quicker, and was much safer than the usual stuff. She didn't expect this to be easy, and after their shouting match in the library, she believed Berry would take some form of precaution to protect herself. The streets of Ponyville were empty, and most of the town's residents were asleep. Moving swiftly and silently, Lyra crossed the road to Berry's house and paused by the window. It was dark inside, nothing stirring. Like most ponies' homes, the interior was mostly open plan. There were a few items of furniture next to a fireplace in the corner of the main downstairs room, which had a few doors along the far wall. A set of wooden stairs in the middle of the room led up to a large balcony area, which had doors to the bathroom and Barry's bedroom. Underneath the balcony was a kitchen area with cupboards and cooking equipment, next to which was the back door, Lyra's way in. She sneaked around and pulled her lockpick out of her pocket, using her magic to twist it into the keyhole until she got the result she wanted. Carefully and quietly, she opened the unlocked door and checked to see if the coast was clear. There was no sign of any obvious traps or security measures. As the last precaution, she used her magic to apply a little light pressure against all visible surfaces, making a sweep of the room. Nothing. Closing the door gently behind her, she slowly made her way to the foot of the stairs while staying on high alert, listening and looking for any sign of danger. She climbed, staying light on her feet and wary of any squeaky steps. She made her way past the railing on the left till she reached the balcony. There was a modest minibar and a wine cabinet on the far wall, with beanbag chairs scattered over a dark rug. Lyra crept to the door to what she knew was Barry Punch's bedroom. Her pulse quickening, she gripped the handle with her magic and opened it in a slow arc. To the right were cupboards and a side table, which had a small number of framed photographs of Barry and her daughter. In the center lay a large bed. A pony-sized lump was under the covers. Lyra took in the scene, and with a jolt realized something was off. This was a double bed, but there were no pillows on its left-hand side. She swiftly pulled her head back from the doorway and saw her enemy making her way out from behind the minibar. Their eyes met and Barry bared her teeth. "You dare come here? Break into my house?" she cried, then charged. Lyra reared up, but Barry was too quick. She slammed the unicorn against the wall with a heavy thud. Lyra retaliated with a headbutt, forcing her to lose her grip, then pushed her into the center of the room. The two ponies stared at each other through the gloom, both on their hind legs in a combat stance, waiting for some pony to make a move. As Lyra regarded her opponent, the beginnings of a smile curved her lips. Barry appeared to be slightly unsteady on her feet. The unicorn tried a light jab, which Barry dodged before launching a failed counterstrike. Her movements were swift and fluid, difficult to predict. She was the first to get a couple of glancing hits in on Lyra's body. Lyra quickly realized Barry hadn't been drinking at all. Her irregular movement was actually part of her fighting style. Lyra was forced back by the ferocity of her opponent's attacks, sweat forming on her brow. Another blow hit. She winced, now fully on the defensive. Her side ached. Her forelegs stung, trembling with every block. Still, she focused, waiting for an opening. Seeing her moment, she hopped back as Barry swung again. The blow missed, and Lyra took full advantage, smashing her hoof forward and catching the purple pony just underneath her left eye. Barry whirled around and was forced to place her forelegs on the floor to catch her balance. She saw Lyra's hoof coming, but it was too late to stop it. She cried out as it caught her under her chin, with another blow to her face knocking her sprawling across the rug. Panting heavily, the flesh under her eye beginning to get puffy, she looked up as Lyra advanced on her to finish the job. A flash of rage shot through her, and she was on her hooves, letting out a scream as she charged at Lyra and grabbed her around the stomach, lifting her off the floor as they surged forward. The unicorn panicked. The stairs were right behind her. Adrenaline taking over, she pushed out with her hind legs and knocked Barry away from her. Too late. Pain cracked through her back as she slammed against the top of the banisters. She fell. Wildly reaching out with her foreleg, she caught the rail, but still felt herself toppling sideways towards the hard edge of the wooden steps. Her other foreleg found purchase, and she swung her lower body forward as momentum took over. Her front legs wrapped around the banister. Lyra slid down the stairway, her butt bouncing off of every step. She lost her grip and tumbled when she reached the bottom, rolling on her side as she hit the floor. She lay there a moment to catch her breath, then her eyes went wide. She forced herself to dodge out of the way as Barry Punch leapt at her from halfway down the stairs. The unicorn pulled herself to her hooves and scowled as she came face to face with her opponent once more. Time to end this, she thought to herself. Without once taking her eyes off Barry, she used her magic to open one of the pockets on her back and pulled out the chloroform-soaked handkerchief. The purple pony's expression crinkled with confusion as she backed away slightly. Pressing her advantage, Lyra sent the handkerchief flying towards Barry's face. The earth pony raised her hoof instinctively, catching it before it could reach its target. Panic sparked in her eyes as she realized that she probably didn't want that thing going anywhere near her, and she slammed her hoof down firmly to keep it there, preventing Lyra from making a second attempt at smothering her. But this left her vulnerable. She couldn't fight and hold down the handkerchief at the same time. Barry grimaced, a bead of sweat forming on her brow as Lyra closed the distance between them. The unicorn raised her front hooves, ready to strike the finishing blow. Before she could do so, Barry suddenly made a desperate dive away from her, towards the fireplace on the back wall. She performed a forward roll, grabbing the poker lying next to the coal scuttle as she did so. Lyra gritted her teeth and used her magic to raise up the handkerchief. Barry swung wildly at the square of material as it dipped and weaved through the air, evading her attacks, but never getting close enough to hit its target. Then she got lucky, thrusting the poker forward and catching it dead center. She smiled and lifted her weapon upwards, intending to skewer the handkerchief safely against the floor. Lyra sneered. With a simple flicker of magic from her horn, she pulled the handkerchief free and sent it flying at Barry's face. The Earth Pony jumped away from the attack, grabbing the cloth and frantically wrestling with it as she rolled on the floor. With one last effort, she hit it with her hoof and pressed it against the wall. If she had been vulnerable before, now she was a sitting duck. Her struggle had left her lying on her back, unable to move, without leaving herself open to a good chloroforming. All she could do was watch as Lyra, upside down from her perspective, advanced on her. "All right," said the mint green-coated unicorn, walking alongside the wall. "We can do this the easy way, or the hard way." Barry frowned angrily, her stomach rising and falling as she panted heavily. "You leave me no choice," she said, then closed her eyes and shouted, "Pinchy!" Lyra jumped as the door nearest her suddenly burst open. A quick glance revealed that it was the broom closet, but nothing could have prepared her for what was inside. It was a pink-coated filly with a bucket on her head, holding a large mop with her two front legs and brandishing it like a sword. "Hold it there, evil-doer! You are under arrest!" cried the little filly. Lyra gaped in astonishment, then realized too late that Barry was rushing at her. A double hoof kick smashed against Lyra's head, knocking her off her hooves. The force of the attack blurred her vision, and before she had a chance to recover, Barry was upon her. Lyra let out a muffled scream as the handkerchief was pressed hard against her nose and mouth. She struggled to get free, but she could already feel herself fading into unconsciousness. "Ha!" Barry said triumphantly, a vicious grin on her face. "You see, Lyra, I told you I'd win. You know why? Because unlike you, I've got some pony who'd do anything for me. Unlike you, I've got some pony who cares." But the unicorn spy could no longer hear her. You see what happens when you don't ship Lyra with me? She ends up getting defeated by a little filly." So how about that series finale, eh? One thing I haven't seen anyone else mention is the fact that not only did Princess Celestia get one-shotted, she was defeated by the power of love. Well, okay, an energy beam created by Queen Chrysalis feeding off Shining Armor's love for Cadance. In my mind, it still counts. And the captain of the Royal Guard is Twilight's brother? She must be the most well-connected pony in Equestria. This new revelation also meant that I had to rethink some of the later chapters of my story. It helped me to resolve a plot hole I didn't even realize was there. So that's good. The ending to the first part of the finale was pretty harsh on Twilight, though. Just imagine if it had turned out that had been the real Cadance and not Queen Chrysalis. I think it would have been quite funny if they ended it that way. Twilight left all alone, crying on the steps. Does that make me an awful pony?